Hi, and welcome to another episode of That's Odd TV, where we aspire to have a couple of moments, at least during the course of the show, where you stop and say, "That's odd." I'm Lynn Garthwaite. My co-host is Nadia Giordana, and I'm having one of those peripheral vision moments where I feel compelled to ask, "What are you up to, Nadia?"
Oh, Lynn, hi, how are you? I'm happy to be here on the show today.
It's a helium moment. Brilliant.
Want a hit?
I'll take a hit. Give me some of that.
Squeeze that tight.
Tell us something about helium, Nadia.
Well, helium is the second most abundant
Second
element.
to what?
Stuck again. Do it again. Do it again.
Where's the bus to Poughkeepsie?
It's the second most abundant
Tell us what helium is.
element. Yeah.
The second most abundant element in the universe,
But it's also non-renewable here on Earth. Boy, that goes away fast,
It does,
doesn't it?
yeah.
We can't do too many of those because it can also cause asphyxiation because it replaces the
Swell.
oxygen in your system.
I've heard that we're having a shortage, though. Is that correct?
Yes, some people in the scientific community have called for, and I didn't know this before we decided to do this balloon gag today, called for a ban on non-essential usage of helium, because the second it's released, like we did here today, the second it's released, it goes up through our atmosphere and it's gone. It's non-renewable, and they're saying party balloons are non-essential.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'd have to agree with them, so I will think twice before I go to use one again.
So for those of you thinking of starting a career as a clown, you may want to rethink that or come up with some other. And I understand it's not something we can reproduce synthetically. So it's
No,
it's a
I don't
substance that
think
once
so.
it's gone, it's gone.
So it'll change the tone of a human voice. It can cause asphyxiation if you did too much of that. So
Right.
kids, don't do this at home. And is helium what they put into blimps? It's not hydrogen, because that's the one that burns.
Shoot, I would have looked that up. I would have Googled it.
I think so. I think it's what goes
Yeah,
into...
we don't want another burning blimp.
I
Right.
think so. And then it takes 2,500 of these balloons to get a 55-pound child up off the ground.
Oh, okay.
So I'm assuming that for me to get lift off, it might take 6,000 or 7,000 of them.
It's probably why you don't see people floating through the air with balloons attached very
No,
often.
that's more of a myth than anything.
Or the movie Up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's tasteless and odorless, and want a hit?
I'm good. But you know what makes helium gags possible? Our lips.
Yes,
thought about that?
yes, I
The
have.
importance of lips. I found out some interesting facts about lips. Just like fingerprints, no two sets of lips are the same. That's odd. I don't know.
I didn't know
And
that.
I always wonder about those things. How do they know that? We'd have to look at thousands and thousands and thousands of examples to determine there's no correlation.
Well, then what? You can also use them like fingerprints then, because your
Maybe
lips
to identify
are just as
people,
unique
right.
as fingerprints.
Lips don't have sweat glands. I learned that too.
I didn't
It's why
know
they dry
that.
out so much. So keep your lip balm handy.
Only the upper lip gets sweaty.
Yeah, right, because that's part of the skin, the facial features. So, one other thing that makes our lips unique is that we are the only animal in the animal kingdom that has a distinct line between where the lips stop and the skin starts. So there's colored variation. In the animal kingdom, you'll notice that it's just one color that just flows through. It's not distinct.
Oh, I'll be darned.
Fascinating.
And it is fascinating, and I learned just yesterday that in Thailand, there's a beauty craze sweeping the country. It has not caught on anywhere else, but essentially, and of course, those ladies, they have very beautiful lips, and there's a little more of a Cupid's bow look to it, but they call this craze the buffalo horn lip craze, and it's named after, let's see, cracked chap lips is how they say it. It's named after a water chestnut they call a buffalo nut, but it's about the shape, and they take a plastic surgeon takes two little divots, like out of this part that's where the peaks are and on your lips, and it gives it a much more distinct Cupid's bow look,
Okay.
which I think is fun and interesting. I saw a couple of pictures and I thought it was rather attractive, not all that odd.
In the
really.
eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen other indigenous groups that extend the length of their lips, things like that. It's a sign of beauty for them. So lip tattoos.
Lip tattoos. Now, I've seen some of that done. Some seems to be very nice as far as using for cosmetic purposes. I've always thought it'd be kind of fun to have lip liner on, but boy, that artist would have to be really good.
Yes.
Because you mess that up and you're going to have to live with that.
Well, they do that with eyeliner now. Eyeliner,
Yes,
you know, they
yes.
put tattooed eyeliner on. So that
Yes.
would be a
I actually did the eyeliner thing a few years ago. You can't tell because I put eyeliner on anyway, so
okay.
it was like kind of a waste of money.
did it hurt?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Drove me nuts. I in fact, enough that I did not go back for the second application.
Okay.
So it kind of just faded away anyway.
Yeah.
You're supposed to go through it twice, and I just could not stand that needle going in
It's
around
another
my
thing
eyes.
where you want to make sure they are
Yeah.
dead on
Yeah.
accurate on that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
one
I
slip
changed my mind and didn't go back and let her have my money. It wasn't her
Yeah.
fault.
Well, lips are important for a lot of things. One of it is eating, and most of us like candy, sweets. We took a trip to the Minnesota's largest candy store, and got a look at some of the treats they had. So lips came in handy very well there.
Yeah, let's try one. Now, this one has teeth on it too. I guess I don't know.
These lips would be a little tougher. I wouldn't mind getting a tattoo on these lips. It wouldn't hurt, but
Yeah, that might not be so bad. But yes, we went to the world's largest candy store. Was that huge?
it was amazing.
Or what?
And turned out to be the best place on the planet to buy jigsaw puzzles of all things.
I know, and
Thousands
I don't
of
do
jigsaw
jigsaw
puzzles,
puzzles,
yeah.
but you do.
I do, so
You do.
I picked up a couple.
Yeah,
but-
I went through and there was literally aisle after aisle after aisle, row after row, and we've got a clip that we're going to show in a minute or so about all this candy in that candy store. And it wasn't all just candy either. There were some other snack foods and
beverages
things like that in there.
and fresh baked bakery goods, things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And some animated characters and music and things. They make it kind of
Yeah.
a fun
Yeah.
experience.
Well, let's take a look at that clip for a minute.
Super.
All right.
Hey, could you help me? I stuck my head in the hole here trying to get some honey, but my arms don't fit. Could you feed me some honey? You know why teddy bears are never hungry? Because they're stuffed.
All right then, well this is pretty cool. I had to have the one with the teeth on it. I suppose that's the fault of this
Had to
part.
buy those, so you can get those at the candy store too.
You know, and what this does is bring back childhood memories, and I'm going to tell on myself because I did one of the dumbest things, and I was 7 years old. Oh, it was just the most. This was excruciatingly traumatizing because I had a kitchen glass.
Okay.
And I must have had something in it, I don't know, but that was empty. And I was watching television, and I had the glass, and I had it on my mouth, over my mouth and over my lips, and I started sucking the air out of the glass. Well, then that pulls your lips forward, and I thought, well, that's kind of cool.
I see where you're going
And
with
yeah, I
this.
know, and the glass stuck to my face.
Yeah.
Well, I did that several times and ended up giving myself a goatee hickey on my face. It
How
was
long did it last?
a week, and I had to go to school that way. It was absolutely one of the worst experiences in my
How
life.
do you explain that?
Oh, no, I couldn't do
I
much
can't
with
quite
it.
beat that, but one of my fondest memories, growing up a tomboy, I was lucky enough to live on a yard that backed up to a pond, which had a field and a woods. So we spent all the time in the woods and the field. And I distinctly remember picking up a garter snake one time. I would pick up snakes in those days. And we'd come across this quite long garter snake with a bulge in its neck, so we knew it had just eaten something.
Oh.
And I picked it up by the tail, and it disgorged its lunch, which was a
Really?
fully intact frog in kind of a slimy casing,
Yeah.
whatever. We thought that was crazy. We thought that was too cool, but we thought he probably wanted to go back and eat it, so we set it down and left. I did go back later to try to find it again, and it wasn't there.
Was
But
the lunch gone too?
the lunch was gone, yes. So somehow it did manage to eat, but it must have been pretty startled by our
Did you
appearance.
know it was a garter snake?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
so
We'd been catching them
yeah,
forever,
yeah.
whatever. But nowadays you'd have to pay me about $10,000 to pick up a snake. So
I think you're right. Even though I know what garter snakes are and I'm not afraid of them, I still don't want to actually
Exactly.
touch one.
But I've heard that snakes, if you eat them, they taste like chicken.
I've heard that too.
You could cook one.
Of course, yes, I probably would try that sometime. I just wouldn't eat it. But let's talk about cooking for a minute. I love to cook. My husband loves to cook. The one thing that happens in our household is what we argue about is who gets to cook or how that gets cooked once we settle on who is the one that gets to cook.
Right.
That's not what happens in your house?
That's not in my household. My husband is a fantastic griller. So any grilling duties are his, and he smokes things, that long, all day long smoking kind of thing. And that's about it. And that's fine because the rare times that he has cooked, it's kind of like dorm food.
Are you a pretty good cook?
I'm one of those traditional meat and potato cookers. I don't do any fancy kind of things. I
Comfort
try a lot
food.
of new recipes.
Yeah.
But they fall into that category of comfort food. So it's all edible. My husband eats everything.
I like to try different things.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's one of the things we have on this show is when we do cook on the show, it's something odd.
Right.
And I've noticed my mother, I didn't notice it while I was growing up, she always liked to try different things. So anyway, I like to try unusual recipes and I find things, and I saw something going all over the internet. So if it's on the internet, it must be good.
Must be
right?
good. Must be true.
It was pickled avocados.
Okay. I'm going to just let that sit for a minute.
Yes, well, I didn't bring any in for us
Thank
to
you.
try today. But I did make them, and we're going to see the clip in a minute. But I'll talk a little bit about that. It was hard to do. It was hard to make. I told my husband, and of course, when you've been married for a long time, the husband, he always gets really well trained. I told my husband, these cannot be soft, mushy, ripe avocados,
Okay.
good for guacamole.
Right.
These have to be hard avocados. Well, he definitely brought me hard avocados. They were just as hard as rocks. I think for this recipe, they need to be somewhere in between.
Okay.
So
Good to know.
the reason I'm giving the recipe a thumbs down, the taste was mediocre, bland, in between, but the avocado slices themselves, because they were so hard, were hard as rocks. So that tells me that it's really tricky to get the exact right avocado for this recipe
Okay.
and to do that. So anyway, let's look at the clip now
can't wait to see
and
it.
see how we did it.
Great cooking segment. Thanks for showing us that. Got to try that at home. Softer. We like to do a thing we call Did You Know? We find kind of odd little fun facts and we bring them to your attention. Maybe it's something you didn't know. One of the ones I found this week was that if you ever need to tell identical twins apart, you can't use DNA because they actually have identical DNA. One way you can tell them apart is using their belly buttons.
Really?
Because the belly button actually is a scar tissue because, you know, it's where the umbilical cord was attached. Everybody's scar tissue results is different. So if you really want to nail down to it, that would be the difference.
Have
the way
them
to tell
show
the
their
difference.
belly buttons.
And maybe when they're teenagers, you know, photograph it or whatever, so that later on in life you can identify them. That sounds pretty gruesome.
I've known a couple sets of identical twins, and I can tell them apart. It's just remembering which name goes with that
Right.
slightly different
Sometimes they
face.
just change their hair,
Yeah.
which is handy for the rest of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, DNA is the same. So did you know that?
I did not know that. Well, I have a story, and this actually is a story that I'm going to read parts of, and we can talk about this, because this is a Minnesota story. It happened right here in Minnesota back, let's look at that. Okay, I got this from roadsideamerica.com. Let's give credit where credit is due. It's titled Car Smashed by UFO. It happened in Warren, Minnesota. It was after midnight on August 27th, 1979. On an empty two-lane blacktop in northwest Minnesota, Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson saw an unusual bright light. He was driving 65 miles an hour to reach it when the light suddenly zoomed ahead and came straight at him. As he later described it, what was there was now here.
Oh.
He was blinded, he heard the sound of breaking glass, and he passed out. When he woke up nearly 40 minutes later, the car was stopped sideways on the road, halfway on and halfway off, having somehow driven almost another 1,000 feet. Wow. Inexplicably, the car's electric clock and his wristwatch, which are always kept synced to the perfect time, were both 14 minutes slow. You know, this is real stuff that happened. This is a law enforcement officer. They were both 14 minutes slow. Johnson himself was later found to have burned retinas from extreme exposure to extreme bright light. That'd be like the eclipse that we saw here recently. It'd be the same as viewing that eclipse. Where would light like that come from at midnight on the road? A metal expert from Honeywell Labs examined the car's two weirdly bent antennas and determined that it was from blasts of air. Now that doesn't make sense to me, but that was a Honeywell expert, so let's give him that. A Ford Motor Company expert said that the force on the glass was inward and outward almost simultaneously.
Interesting.
That also is strange. The damage to the car from front to back was only 1 foot wide and went the length of the car.
Okay.
It was all very, very strange. I don't even know if I believe in UFOs, but I do know that strange things have happened.
Right.
Now, the county officials wanted to fix the car, but instead they put it on display at the Marshall County Fair, and it's been a big attraction both at the fair and at their museum there for years and years and years, well, since 1979.
Yeah.
Ever since, people come to look at it, but one person is Johnson himself, the former law enforcement officer. He's retired. He no longer lives in the area. He almost never will talk about this incident unless you really draw the story out of him. I think that's kind of an interesting story, and the locals say it's not a hoax. You know, he's a very credible man.
And what's atypical is that he won't talk about it. Normally, if somebody's trying to bring attention to themselves with some kind of hoax story or whatever, then it's all about them and they want to be on every news program. If he won't talk about it, that kind of lends a little bit of interest.
Makes you think twice about what that was, what happened. I'm sure.
So if you're not sure if you believe in UFOs, do you believe that there is alien life out there, though? somewhere.
Somewhere there almost has to be. The universe is so
Statistically,
big.
right.
Not in our, I don't think we'll ever see it in our solar system. I don't think we'll ever see it in our lifetime. But wouldn't you think that somewhere out there, there's got to be?
I totally believe that there is other life out there, probably scads of it. Whether it's been here, visited, I don't know. I mean, I like to think of myself as a curious skeptic.
Yeah.
Skeptical,
Yeah.
but I'm so curious about these things. And so many people report the same thing as far as like some kind of alien encounter.
Yeah.
So it kind of
Yeah.
makes you wonder, unless they're reading each other's stories, how could the stories be all the same? It's interesting.
It is interesting because you see the stories and the people that are talking about it are credible. So, I don't know.
Somebody ought to make a movie about it. Maybe write a book. There's got to be some good substance
There's
in there.
got to be some good substance in there.
Very good.
Well, let's talk about a few more did you knows. Oh, speaking of outer space, it was discovered on a space mission. Oh, this is kind of a gross one, but oh well.
Good time to spring that on us.
A frog can throw up. No one knew that before. Apparently, he throws his stomach up first, so the stomach is coming out of its mouth. Then the frog uses its forearms to dig the contents out of the stomach, and then he swallows his stomach back.
Oh.
I'm sorry for that
That's
one. I just looked and
right after the
started reading.
avocado segment.
Here,
and-
you do something.
And we did cover frogs when we talked about that snake incident.
Yeah.
I read that the arteries in a blue whale are large enough that a human being could swim through them, if one would want to.
Wow.
They're that big.
I mean, that makes my jaw drop. The blood veins, the arteries.
The arteries, the big ones, yep. And we had talked in a previous episode about the tongue of a blue whale is half the weight of an elephant.
So I wonder how many, well, we probably talked about that before too, how many tons that animal must be. I wonder how big that would look if that were here in this room.
It would take up much of the room.
Holy cow, yeah, that would really be good.
If the blue whale could throw up its own stomach, we'd have a problem. That'd be interesting. That would be a did you know moment.
That would be a did you know
That would be a
moment.
made up did you know moment. We gotta be careful.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's see. I think we're almost, well, I'll do one more did you know.
Alrighty.
Stewardesses is the longest word that is typed with only the left hand.
Oh,
Now, I wonder if that has to do with just typewriters or modern keyboards.
I
Are
think-
you a good keyer?
well, if they're all the QWERTY keyboards,
Okay, so
they'd
then it
be
would
the
be the
same.
same.
Yeah,
It would be the same.
be the same.
Ah, who knew?
Yeah.
Okay.
We took a visit to a place very interesting called Hot Sam's. If you've been on the freeway, I-35, right around the Lakeville, Minnesota area, you may have seen up on the hill some odd statues. There's a giant great white whale,
I've
great white
driven by
shark,
that before that day
big
and
guitar,
wondered.
some
Yeah.
odd things. Turns out there's an entire place to go visit back there, and it's called Hot Sam's. And the clip we're going to show you are some of the shots from that.
That's going to be a fun one, too. All right, well, we're getting close to the very end of the program, but watching that clip reminded me of the other excursion that you and I had when we went to see the Jolly Green Giant.
That's right.
And that was so much fun. Of course, you saw him in the very beginning of the program.
That's right.
And that was totally fun to go out there that day. He was way bigger than I expected.
And interestingly enough, when we got within a couple blocks, we were saying, oh, it's so much smaller.
Yeah.
And then we drove right up to it. It's like, oh, it's so much bigger. So
Whoa.
kind of an optical illusion.
It was an optical illusion because from a distance it's like, oh, what a disappointment.
Yeah.
We drove all the way out here and then we get closer to it and it's like,
Yep.
it was bigger and bigger and bigger
Worth
and
a
bigger.
trip.
Well, so anyway, we want to say goodbye and we hope to see you next time on That's Odd.